This is Scott Richmond.
And Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. Arnie Sherman, good morning.
Scott, it's good to see you. It's good to be back. You got a haircut. You're looking good.
And welcome back from your travels.
It's good to be back from my travels. You know, this time of year, beside the holiday season with pumpkins out and stores being dressed up for the holiday season, we've just had an election week. And even though it's an off-year election, it isn't a presidential election. There was no Senate races of any significance or House races.
Right.
It's still exciting to watch the Democratic process in action.
Yeah. And
particularly in this era, because it is relatively unpredictable.
Right.
But it is not. It is good to see it in action. And there are elative. There are parts of it that bring elation, and there are parts of it that are a little bit, depressing. The depressing parts are, beside whether your candidate won or not, only 33 or 34% of the people who can vote do vote,
which is high.
Which is high, and it's sad in a way.
Right.
And lots of times
normally 25.
When people complain about what's going on, I always ask them, did you vote? And many of the complainers never vote.
Right.
The part that brings elation is that there are surprises all over the place. In Montana this week, we elected the first Liberian refugee, man of color as mayor of a city in Helena, Montana.
Amazing.
Who would have thought of that?
What's his name?
I forget his name, but he won, and
right.
I mean he's been a refugee here for a number of years, but still that's pretty impressive.
It is
to see that happen. As you know, around the country, a lot of electoral upset in New Jersey and Virginia,
won.
And it also this week is, ironically or interestingly, is the birthday of the state of Montana.
Amazing.
And when you think about Democratic institutions, Montana's only been a state for 128 years.
That's it.
I mean, they're almost people
young.
that's still alive. They're almost, you're one generation removed from the founders of the state. And it is relatively, in its infancy, our democracy. I mean, when you travel around the world, you go to places that are, thousands of years old.
Right.
There are buildings, all over Europe and Asia that are 10 times older than the state of Montana. So our experiment with democracy is relatively young here.
Yep.
And that's why in many cases it's it still has its growing pains and its squeaks and its rattles.
Right.
And it has its predictability and unpredictability, but often it just balances itself out, right?
It sure does.
It swings one way or another way. You elect somebody like Trump that has a strong core base, and right now he's the least popular president this far into his term.
What are his ratings again? It's
36%.
36%.
I mean, it's hard to govern.
Down for 30 from 43.
The only guy that I know who's less than that, who just got couldn't stand for re-election in New Jersey, was Chris Christie, who was in double digits, like 18% popularity. But, the reaction to that is, we sort around the country. In fact, in Virginia, they swung more seats in Virginia from Republican to Democrat than any time in the state's history since 1899.
Which is incredible. And they think this is a reaction just to the current administration, correct?
Well, it's a combination of two things, I think. It's a combination of reaction to Trump turning out a lot of Democratic voters.
Right.
A reaction by some Republicans to Trump, but the resulting being they didn't vote.
Right.
If you analyze the voting in Virginia and New Jersey, the Democrats who won had more votes than, for example, than Hillary Clinton had 4 years ago, and the Republicans had either the same or less. So, people just didn't, turn out.
Right. First time around.
And it's a reaction not only to Trump, but the fact that there has been, legislative malaise, and Republicans are in control. You can blame anybody you want, but they're in control of both houses of Congress, and you can't get a tax bill through. You can't get a health care bill through. You can't get, any real major legislative accomplishments, and that falls on the shoulders of both the President of the United States and his party that controls both branches.
Right. It's inert right now.
Right. So people are angry, and there have been, for better or worse, politics of division going on, and people react to it. My favorite election, though, this past week was the person in Virginia who introduced the first transgender bathroom bill got defeated by a transgender candidate, which, in Virginia is pretty remarkable.
That's very progressive.
I mean, it's remarkable.
You would have thought that'd be in New York or California.
Yeah, it was in the state of Washington. Now all branches of government are controlled by Democrats, which is a swing from the way it's been in the past. So I think there's this foreboding on the Republican side coming up for 2018.
Right.
And there's, I think, guarded adulation, or excitement for the Democrats because it's still a long way off.
It's a long way off.
Right. And the Republicans may be forced to compromise just to get legislation passed so that they have something to rest their laurels on.
Sure. So how is this informing our today's guest?
Well, today's guest it's interesting. We have I guess because of our celebration of Montana, we have Andy Shirtliff, who is from the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and he is the small business advocate. And we're here to talk about the state of Montana, and particularly from the business perspective.
I saw Andy speak this summer at a conference that my friend Blake hosted, and he was fantastic.
Well, he's a UM graduate in political science, and he's been in the governor's office for over 4 years. And I'm anxious to hear about, as he's traveled around the state, what he is seeing from small business. Montana's not only a state of small business; it's actually a state of micro business. Sure. Majority of the businesses in the state have under 10 employees. Those are not small businesses.
Right.
Small business, as defined by the Small Business Administration, is businesses with 500 or less employees.
So that's
almost every business in the state of Montana.
And you're covering a lot of those businesses, or a lot of businesses, on your new podcast.
Right. We're the new podcast that's airing on Montana Public Radio called Can Do: Lessons from Savvy Montana Entrepreneurs. We're looking at small businesses that are growing and trying to be successful.
So this is going to be a great conversation with Andy Shirtliff.
We certainly hope so.
All right, Arnie, we'll be back right after this. Dawn Maddox of Engel and Volkers is a proud sponsor of What Do You Know? All right, we are back with Andy Shirtliff.
Andy.
Yes, sir. Hey.
How you doing?
Good, Arnie. Good to see you.
Good to see Scott, too.
Of course.
He had a haircut today. He's looking good.
You guys have the same haircut?
We do.
Yeah, have the same barber.
Yeah.
Henkel.
The barber of Seville, I think. So this week was Montana's 128th birthday.
Yes, it was. Happy birthday, Montana.
That's right.
Yep,
and tell us, as the small business advocate in Montana, give me the temperature. Tell me what's going on in small business in Montana in general.
Well, as you know, before this year, for 4 years in a row, we were the #1 state to start a business, according to the Kauffman Foundation.
Right.
This is based in in St. Louis, Missouri.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They've rated us. Now we're about #4. We're top 5.
Right.
There's reasons why we've been #1. There's reasons why we might have dropped.
Right.
You look at our economy right now, it's very diverse. And I think that's what saved us during the downturn in 2009 is that we've diversified. We're just more than coal, corn, and cows.
Right. And people used to, still in some ways, if you go to Helen and listen to legislators, they seem to, present us as that, and we are not that.
Well, and also, too, they hear a lot of people say, I wish we were more like North Dakota. Well, North Dakota put all their eggs in the oil basket, and they had a significant issue when it came to their budget. But you look at Montana, when those men and women who worked in the oil fields came back to Montana, they moved into manufacturing, into housing, into other industries like bioscience and photonics and high-tech coding and such like that.
Well, we're so diverse and clever that this week we decided to bring 6 of the unused housing units from the Bakken oil field to Missoula and put them in as low, as affordable housing units here in Montana.
We have to be innovative, and I think that's it's ingrained in Montanans because if you're working in the cornfields or if you're working out in the wheat fields and your tractor breaks down, no one's there to help you. You have to be innovative to fix it. I think we have a pioneering spirit here in Montana, kind of an entrepreneurial spirit. But also, too, we see people say, I see what you're doing. I can do that better. And when there were no jobs, they would have to go and create one. I think people would rather be their own boss, wouldn't you? I'd rather be my own boss.
Sure.
Some days.
One of the other things I find interesting when you dig down a little bit is a lot of the folks in Montana that are starting new business are women. And we have a lot of women entrepreneurs.
Yes, we have some of the fastest growth of women business owners in the entire United States. For a while there, we weren't, but we are now. And I think one of the reasons why we might have dropped as overall for the #1 state for startups is we've got a lot of resources, a lot of programs and people willing to help. But if you look at the SBA, the Small Business Association that has its headquarters in Helena, they're not allowed to spend money on marketing.
Why?
Isn't that silly?
Well, because the government federal rule.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things where we're here to help, but also too we don't want to have too big of a government. I'm not sure what the reason is, but we try to help. We look at things like from a Team Montana approach. If somebody comes to us, let's say Big Sky Fulfillment, which is who we met with today. It's a fulfillment center, kind of like they do those boxes, almost like Blue Apron, those Loot Crate things. Well, they ship those all over the country from here in Missoula, right behind Big Sky Brewing, Montana's first and
Is that right? That's what's back there.
Yeah, they've got a huge facility back there, and they're growing. But the guy came up and we said, "Hey, we'd like to meet with you. How can we help?" He had no idea of some of the things that we could help with.
So what can you do? Well, tell me what you can do.
So
I walk in your office.
Okay.
I say, I'm a small business. Help me, Andy. Help me, Andy. Tell me what you can do.
First, let me go up against the wall. But first, one of the things we do is say, okay, what are you doing? Where are you doing it? Because we want to try and triangulate where you're doing things in what industry and try to help kind of narrow down the choices of people that you could work with. Let's say here it'd be Missoula Economic Partnership.
Right.
Our folks, James Gronke, Jenny Graff down at MEP can help. If you're looking to hire people, we put you in touch with the local Missoula Job Service. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a student at the University of Montana, you go to Blackstone Launchpad.
Right.
Or Montech, which is across the river. There are people that are mentors here, such as like a group called the Montana Ambassadors. One of my close friends, Andy Gordon, is based here in Missoula, is a Montana ambassador, one heck of an entrepreneur, one heck of a sales guy for the company he works for, but he's a great mentor. And he belongs to a group of 200 people that are willing to be mentors.
One of the things that I found out, even doing this show, and I think you run into it every day, is how many interesting businesses are sprouting up in Montana that you didn't know about. One example is Michelle Huey, who came to see us, who has Vim and Vigor.
We hear
it's
about
an
them all the time.
unbelievable company.
Yeah. Absolutely. They are
submittable.
Another great company. I mean, what's another company? I gave a talk at Moonlight Kitchens here to about 8 folks looking to start businesses in kind of the food area. And that's an area that we're seeing as local food. Missoula's kind of leading that charge.
Sure. A guy like Tom Snyder and Five on Black.
5 on Black. I'm probably going to go have dinner there tonight on the way up.
He's got 5 locations in 3 years.
I know. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. 2 or 3 of them are down in Colorado.
Yeah. One's in Denver, and the other one I think is in Boulder.
Well, it's interesting. You can connect the dots because if you look at what the new Missoula College with the culinary school, and they're going to be, and I know down in Bozeman they're doing this too, hospitality and the travel and hospitality kind of school and restaurant management, and all this is supporting. That's local business, right?
Really?
Well, one of the things we talked about in the lead-in is that we need a lot of this support because Montana is really a state of micro business, not small business.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these businesses start off with 2 or 3 employees.
That's about it. Yep.
And then they grow, but the president is also the marketing director and the guy on the loading dock, right?
They wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, they wear a lot of hats.
Yep.
So we do need to have a lot of support because they just spread too thin in most cases.
Well, you've got one case where we're kind of coming out of a generation that's used to working at. The entire town works at one place. I come from Kalispell,
right?
And it's largely was tourism or timber. You look at Columbia Falls was the aluminum plant that shut down. Then the timber mill shut down. Columbia Falls is gone for a roller coaster ride. However, they've been able to diversify. They've learned from some of the lessons. They've gotten advice from outside, and they've grown from within. They've worked on small businesses. For instance, I had somebody who was an elected official about 4 years ago asked me, Andy, what's going to take to get something like the Smurfit Stone mill up and running again that just hires 400 people and we go from there? And I said, well, you know what would be better? If we had maybe, instead of one hiring 400, what if we had maybe like 200 places hiring 4 people or 400 small businesses,
Right.
so that if one goes down, it doesn't devastate a community like it did here in Missoula back in
Sure.
2009.
Well, a good example is a guy like Nick Chakota.
Nick Chakotah's awesome.
He's got 160 employees working for him at Logjam, and at the 3 restaurants he has. I mean, quietly, it's become one of the larger businesses in Missoula.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, and he's one of the best guys. The Top Hat's one of the best locations to go.
Sure.
Their food's
Wilma,
fantastic.
the new Kettle House. I mean,
New
all
Kettle
of
House
that.
Amphitheater.
And did that in just a few years.
So, Andy, in your role
Yeah.
as the small business advocate, are you dealing with a combination of people that are local, that are looking for advice and mentorship and resources, or is there out-of-state money and out-of-state interest that's coming in and reaching out to you first to say, how do I, so tell me how that works.
Well, part of our statute for the Governor's Office of Economic Development, which started about 16 years ago, it was to retain, grow, and attract 3 things. And that's workforce, business, and investment. And we think that we work on this philosophy of growing from within, where if we help existing businesses, help them grow, help keep our workforce here, help them grow by bringing people back, that it's going to attract others. If you look at, let's say, a laboratory that's down in Hamilton, we had GlaxoSmithKline
Right.
down there. They didn't just show up. There was a laboratory down there doing really good work, caught the attention of GlaxoSmithKline. They have a workforce that comes from the University of Montana. Go Grizz. That's where I went to school. But if you look at, let's say, Boeing.
Right.
Boeing is based in Washington. However, they've got a facility that they just expanded another 100,000 square feet, hired another 100 people in Helena.
Wow.
And they're great paying jobs. They build the landing gear for some of their 777s, 737s, and it goes all the way to
Sure.
Washington.
Well, what you're talking about is absolutely correct. It's easier to expand something that's already here than to bring something in new.
You help who's here, because you hear all the time, what are we going to do to bring jobs? I'm like, create them here.
Yeah,
that's what you do. Is you help businesses be successful.
Look at Amazon. Made the decision to go to San Diego.
Sure.
200 places were competing.
Right.
They knew from the very beginning 199 aren't going to win. Right. They're going to spend as much money doing that. They could have diverted that money to helping existing businesses and giving grants and staff support to build what you already got.
We get all the time, like, we actually do have companies that do ping us and say, hey, we're looking for a facility that has X amount of square feet. We need X amount of trained workforce.
Right.
We need to be located near a highway, an airport, rail. We need broadband. And then we'll go out and reach out to our partners. We'll say, whether it's here in Missoula, whether it's in Butte, whether it's in Bozeman, Eastern Montana or Northwest Montana, we'll say, hey, here's what they're looking for. It'll be Project blank. They don't tell us the name. And it's usually a headhunter company.
Right.
Sometimes we think it's an actual company, and sometimes it could be them testing to see where and then see how we rank on our responses. I think we do fairly well.
Do you coordinate with folks like James Grunke and the MEP? And so you guys are a request may come in from XYZ company, and you guys, hey, let's discuss this.
Do you guys meet this criteria? What is your pitch?
Right.
And then we say, here's what we got from Missoula. Here's what we got from Hamilton. Here's what we got from Kalispell.
So you're coordinating a lot of it.
So what is the number? Let me ask you this, Ann. What is the number one request you get when you meet with small business? Does one stand out the most? Is it money?
Money. Access to capital is always one. When Governor Bullock did the Main Street Montana project 4 years ago, when we went out across the state to the biggest cities, to the smallest communities, to Indian country, we found out that access to capital was one of them, but also to access to a trained and educated workforce. We have a really diverse economy here in Montana. We're getting better at it. One of the things we're trying to do is help them stay strong and survive past that 5-year drop-off rate where we're seeing businesses kind of fail around that time. We're trying to improve that. So that's something that we're looking at, working really hard on. But also, too, is diversifying the skills of our workforce.
Sure. Well, and part of the reason on that 5-year curve that I've experienced is, everybody knows it takes 2 or 3 years to get started.
Yeah.
Most of these folks are not skilled financial managers, and they can't make it to 3, 4, 5 years, based on the available
They need that
funding.
but they also need capital, right? They're undercapitalized. You always preach that.
I mean, totally.
In marketing as well.
Yeah. And then you have bright light, examples like Michelle, Huey at Vim and Vigor, who now has her product made in made here, running in
She's
Missoula
exceptional,
in
though.
1,100 locations. She sold 225,000 pairs of compression, of designer compression hose at $39 a pair. If somebody
Unreal.
told me that somebody could do that in 8 months, I'd say that's not possible.
You're crazy.
Show me your numbers.
Let's
show
do
me.
a quick ID. Our guest is Andy Shirtliff. He's the small business advocate for the state of Montana in the governor's office.
So, and we have companies also here like Luminad. I don't know if you know Matt Parker and those guys.
Oh, absolutely. So Luminad, as well as Advanced Technology Group, they're looking to hire a couple hundred people.
I know.
They're growing like crazy here.
We had Ed and Leslie Weatherby on talking about the old sawmill district. There isn't a space there big enough for them.
Really?
Where they think they're going to be a year or two from now.
Wow.
Based here in Missoula. I mean, a big national.
Which company is this?
Luminad. They do.
I know Luminad.
Yeah, you know what they do. They do customized media placement for ad agencies, so they can target media more accurately and attractively for agencies that don't have the capability to do that.
Shotgunning, you're laser focused on things.
Right. That's what we do.
And then,
we do that too.
Yeah,
through digital.
we don't have a laser.
No, we do it out of New York, but it's interesting. So, like a company like that's amazing that a company like that, like a middleware company, they exist here in Montana, and you don't even know it.
Well, yeah, they come here. They come back because Matt went to school here and wants to come back. And a company like that, as long as you have enough infrastructure and can attract people, and Montana is a good place to attract people, you can make it work.
Yeah.
And that's the thing we try to do is like we say, we'd love to have you here. I just met with a group of school kids who are part of the Montana Association of Student Councils. I said, if you choose to leave, we want you to come home. Go get those skills. Go get that experience. Get your resume up to snuff. Come back and teach the rest of us.
Right.
Show us the way, because you have successful people like the folks at Vim and Vigor, and a whole slew of folks like Thomas over at 5 on Black who attend the John Ruffato startup competition.
Right, and they get the money from there.
What they do is you have a room full of over 100 entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs and innovators from Montana that are willing and ready to give you mentorship, guidance. I watched where 2 years ago, there were 3 Native American women who wrote a book, and their pitch was a storybook based on some of the stories they tell each other when they were growing up. They made a book. I saw the guy from Michael from Submittable. I saw folks surrounding these girls saying, here's what we want to do. We want to help you write your business plan. We want to help you invest your money wisely. We want to help you get this book off the ground.
Sure.
There's the new generation of entrepreneur and business owner that is willing to help the person next to them so we all succeed. It's inspiring, actually.
So let me ask you this.
Great.
What in the competitive world of building existing businesses and also attracting new businesses, where do we lag? What are we missing? Is there something that we don't have that we wish we had? I mean, is the infrastructure good enough? Is the technology good enough? Is the broadband good enough?
And I think that made us number one, is because we're able to work around it. I think we try to MacGyver it and get around it. But I mean, there is frustrations, whether it's infrastructure, is it lack of, we've got the number one, probably the best state for quality of life. However, we've got a higher demand for co-working spaces. We've got, which you're starting to see pop up.
Well, yeah, it's going to be some here at the old sawmill.
Oh, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for, the work that you've done over there. I cannot wait to see that thrive, because you always look across the river. You wonder, well, what's this big old plot of land?
Yeah, well, there's going to be 700 families living there pretty soon.
It's going to be, well, that's it's needed. But also, too, so is that baseball park.
Mm-hmm.
So is the river.
Great attraction.
A great attraction.
Face the river.
It's more than just a job. It's more than just a business. It's living there. It's a community. It's where you have coffee shops. You've got food. You've got amenities and parks and places for people to start families. And I think we're growing at a rate, or we have a steady growth that is good for families, and it's not this boom and bust.
I always find it ironic, Andy, that the people who, we have a challenge in Montana, Missoula in particular, in terms of affordable housing, for example, and half of that equation is that wages lag behind costs. And then the people that are so concerned about affordable housing are often the same people who are opposed to growth and expansion, which is the only way you're going to get jobs that are going to enable you to afford what housing costs.
Exactly. You have people here that would say, I would love to live in blank, whether it's Missoula or Bozeman, that's seeing incredible growth, incredible prosperity. However, they're pricing people out. My sister, Erin, lived in Bozeman
Right.
with her husband and 3 kids. They just got priced out of their house.
Right.
The rent went up, and so they had to move back to Anaconda. But the thing is affordable housing is one thing that's probably holding back our workforce. You've got people that, if they're forced to move to, say, like Alberton,
Right.
or move to Arlie, where now they've got to commute. That still adds on. It
Well,
still hurts
but
the pocket.
one of the challenges you have is if in a town like Missoula or Bozeman,
Right.
that are attractive places to live, they're constantly in the list of the best river towns, the best outdoor towns,
Mhm.
and so you're growing your population. You have to build new housing.
Yeah.
New housing's expensive to build. It's going up exponentially. You can't build for $80 a square foot anymore. You just can't build it. And it's more expensive here than some other places because the cost of materials are more expensive
Right.
to get here. So you have that challenge. The only way I think if I'm the mayor, if I'm John Engen in Missoula, the only way you can do that is to figure out a way to attract businesses that pay or
Higher wage.
build businesses that pay higher wages.
Yep, they pay a little bit more, either that or give benefits or maybe stipends for housing. But I mean, housing rates are going up. Also,
Everywhere.
too, and then it's clogging our roads. I don't know how. Actually, when I talked to one of the people, Reserve Street, my goodness.
Yeah.
I had to cool off after getting off of Reserve Street. But I had a professor who actually was part of one of the design team who helped develop Reserve. And it was meant to relieve pressure off
For Brooks.
of Brooks and Russell
Right.
and all
Right,
that.
and then
But-
everybody built on Reserve Street.
Right. So that's the thing. It
Really
was meant
pressure.
to be kind of like a pressure valve or release valve. However, it was supposed to have like a lifespan of 20 years. 5 years later, it's full.
Yeah.
And then we do the Broadway diet over here. I could get into all sorts of things when it comes to
Well, when they built Reserve Street, it was before Super Walmart, Home
Right.
Depot,
Oh, yeah.
Lowe's.
How could they not? But they didn't anticipate.
Well,
they
they know.
didn't know. I mean, how could you? I mean,
I mean,
maybe you got to think ahead, and that's where cities need to do planning, just like business
Yeah.
owners need to plan and think ahead, like Illuminad and those folks saying, "Look, that's not big enough for us in 5 years."
right.
They're looking beyond just now, and that's something that we're trying to tell business leaders and community leaders, that you have to look just beyond this moment and see, just like Reserve probably could have used an extra couple lanes,
Right.
but
Amazing. Do you think it's interesting, like Montana is such an attractive place, just from my experience, because you have the frontier
Mm-hmm.
spirit, you have this Western spirit, and then also you don't have as many regulations and things that tie people up that like maybe a Colorado might have or a Washington State might have. It feels a little more
We hear
like.
it.
Well,
yeah,
plus you
you're-
only have 1 million people,
More
1,050,000
pioneering.
people.
yeah. And
But that's great, though.
It is great. You hear people that will use that old talking point on both sides. Will say we have too many regulations. Well, when they looked at North Dakota, that was the excuse. Like,
Right.
well, why don't we have enough drilling going on here in Montana? Well, at one point under Governor Schweitzer, they were actually doling out permits faster than anywhere else in the United States
Mhm.
for oil drilling in Montana. You look at North Dakota; it was a headache, but the pond was deeper for
Right.
the oil in the oil shale over in North Dakota. But also, too, it's a boom and bust market. And
Right.
you have to diversify away from that. We're looking at that as a
Well, as you
the
know,
health of the
as you
economy.
know,
Yep,
and I
health of our
know, and
economy.
we all know, 2-3 years ago, the folks in North Dakota were saying, "Oh, this is not going to bust. This is boom,
Keep
and
going.
it's going to go for 20, 30 years." And all of a sudden, oil has been flat. What, $40, $50 a barrel? And that's
rates
almost
above 100.
where it was 100, and and you can't make money. You can't make a big investment when you're almost at a break even point.
So Andy, does the
sir.
governor give you a call and say, Andy, tell me what's going on in our small business sector that, we can talk, that I need to know about because I want to understand the trends, or what's your relationship with the governor and his office? I know you're in his office,
Right,
but
I am. So our team at the Governor's Office of Economic Development is roughly 3 doors down from the main governor's office. We are in the Capitol in the hallway. Second door on the right. Feel free to stop by anytime. We're willing to help. Our numbers and emails are online. Whoever's listening.
And what's the website?
Business.mt.gov. So,
Very simple.
yeah.
but we're still small enough and
Right.
informal enough to be able
Yeah.
to walk in and say,
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. People knock on our doors all the time. We have people say, is this
Love
the
that.
Secretary of State's office? No, I walk them down. Give them my business card. Hey, if you need help beyond this point of business registration, let's talk.
Well, you got to remember, to some extent, we're all, Montana, even though it's one of the 50 states,
Right.
the budget of Montana and the size of the government is not much bigger than Arlington, Virginia.
Yeah, you're right.
So it really is small relatively. I mean, if you go to California, you just can't walk into the governor's office
you can't.
in California.
We meet people from all across the United States and across the world that come in and cannot believe
How
that
easy.
they can just walk in and the governor just walks
But is
by.
it informal with the governor? I mean, is it how does it work?
So, well, we've got a team of 5 people. We've got Liz Ching, who used to work with Max Baucus, Senator Baucus, but she's based in Billings. So she covers kind of eastern Montana, northeast Montana. We've got our 3 people in Helena. We've got a new chief business development officer, and that's Ken Fickler. Ken joined us from the private sector. He came from the photonics industry, which in Montana is our photonics cluster has about 30 to 35 companies in it. It's the largest cluster per capita of optics companies in the United States. We go to trade shows. In Holland, the country of Holland came over and they said, I won't do a Holland accent for you, but they came over. They came over and they said, the guys, the gentleman came over and he said, we've got 14 companies in our cluster. We're so proud of that. How many does Montana have? Over 30. And the guy's jaw dropped. He could not believe it because we focused on that. But when it comes to the rest of the team, we just got somebody from the Department of Commerce named Aaron Pratt. And then something that the governor's very strong on, which is public access and the outdoor recreation or the outdoor business industry, which includes like gear, tourism, bikes, and all that. But it creates over $7 billion?
Yeah, $7 billion.
It's in Montana's economy is the outdoor recreation.
Sure,
industry.
and we have plenty of companies who have sprung up as a result.
Strongwater.
And Strongwater.
Sims, all those.
Yeah.
Sims and Bozeman.
But then you look at, the governor had the foresight over a year ago to pitch this idea of having an outdoor recreation person under the Office of Economic Development. We hired Rachel Vandervoort, who was an absolute rock star. She came from Kimber Firearms up in Kalispell.
Nice.
And so we have her. And she's traveling all over the state. She was in our office today, and she's like, ta-ta, I'm off to Glasgow. And she's meeting with folks over there. So our relationship basically is kind of like we work for the governor. We help do economic policy, but also, too, we do outreach. We do help. And we do teamwork because, honestly, no one knows Missoula like Missoulians. So we reached out to Missoula Economic Partnership. We said, tell us what you need. And we get asked all the time, so what industries are you guys pushing for? We help anybody. We're looking to help, but we do see trends.
And we do have good local economic development organizations in Billings and Bozeman, and Butte and Kalispell. I mean, those guys are Great Falls. They're all
is
great.
Accredited, Big Sky Economic Development, excellent.
Terrific group.
We could not do the work we do without our partners from the Montana Economic Developers Association.
But here in Montana, what I've encountered, it's very interesting. You have people that are very strident and they have a particular point of view. It may not always jive with what your political leanings are, but I'm wondering how you kind of
well, not only that, you have the overlay of Grizz and Bobcat that interferes with what's going on.
You've got politically divergent groups. You've got I have to
tell Andy this one story. When I was many centuries ago, when I was running the Montana World Trade Center based, domiciled at the business school at the University of Montana, I reached out to a statewide company that should remain nameless at this point in time, that wanted a dialogue, and they wanted help, with marketing abroad, all the things that we did. And when I told him we were on the UM campus, he wouldn't work with us because he was a Bobcat.
Oh,
he says, "Will you open an office in Bozeman? I'll come and talk."
Too bad. So that's
I mean, that is
awful.
It's like me not doing business with the Philly Fanatic, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly
the head. But anyway, so you deal with a lot of people that come from politically divergent, culturally divergent backgrounds. How do you deal with that? Like, hey, Governor Bullock doesn't support us because, I mean, what do you do?
Oh, gosh. Whether it's they come into our office, I've had legislators who said they've never stepped foot in that office before. That we've had people that are like far right, far left, all points in between. We don't try to look at it through a political lens. We
Right.
try to look at it like, well, how can we help? Honestly and sincerely interested in hearing people out. And we've heard some humdingers. We've heard people that say, hey, come out to my car. I've got the perpetual motion machine in my car.
Right.
Or we have people that walked in with like
Fool's gold.
fool's gold or like a handle of a gun. It looked like the framework of a handgun. He says, I've got an idea for a recoilless gun. I want to meet with the governor right now. It has it in his hand. I was like, well,
You can't walk in here with
hey, why
that.
don't you come down the hallway and talk to me? But you get all sorts of people. But we try to look at it as like, what's going to be benefit Montana and how can we help? Because I think, for instance, Governor Bullock met with Eric Schmidt, COO of Google,
Right.
when he was here for the Max Baucus Summit roughly 4 or 5 years ago. I snuck in the room because I'm a Google fanatic, and I was just completely in awe. And
Right.
also Elon Musk was there. But Governor Bullock asked them, what would you do if you were governor for a day? And he says, well, I would try to be more like Texas, Governor. I'd try to be more like Texas because they all sing off the same song sheet. They all think they're so great. Governor Bullock says to him, he goes, and he prefaced it with, I hate Texas.
But I'd be more like them.
But he goes, I love Montana. He goes, I think you guys need to be more proud. He goes, you know what? I think we let the work do the talking for us.
Ooh.
He says, I think Montanans let the work do the talking for us. And that's what we want to help.
Yeah.
We want to help Montanans do the work, create what they do, make great products from T-shirts to clothing to gear to technology. We're doing great things here in Montana, and that's what we want to help. We want people to help fulfill those dreams and kind of take charge of their own destiny.
You mentioned earlier, shared workspace is something that we need more of.
Sure.
What business sector do you think has the best growth potential, or what sectors do you think if you were advising somebody who says, I want to start a new business, and I'm generic in what I can do.
Okay.
What would you recommend after looking around? What do we need?
Well, I kind of look at the needs. What are the problems you're trying to solve? That's one of the questions we try to ask. What is
The problem I'm trying to solve is we need more money.
We need
to
more
live
money.
here.
Yeah. So, you kind of look at, think that, one of the founding industries of our state is agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
We see value added ag.
Yeah, well, that's one area that I would have certainly said.
Right.
We have a lot of raw material that we don't
that we keep
process.
shipping out, but we're not making product of, whether it's livestock, whether it's like pulse crops. We're one of the top states in the union for pulse crops. However, we do ship raw pulse crops out like legumes and garbanzo beans. We're shipping those out when we could be processing them here, which they are doing up in Great Falls. We're looking at this agritech park where they're going to do a processing plant up there and try to do different types of seeds and oil and create products out of that. That's an area where we see, but also too, another value-added agriculture product, brewing and distilling.
Right.
One of my favorites is, we've got awesome craft beer here in Missoula. We have amazing spirits, whether it's like
Head frame,
absolutely. Glacier. You've
Really
got
good.
Montgomery downtown, which has got they have an excellent product. But people are worried, you see like 70 to 80 different breweries popping up across the state. Smaller cities or smaller towns are looking at this as a way to revitalize their small town.
But there are also
hub.
other things. For example, I'm always impressed when I drive to Great Falls, and I go through Lincoln and I stop at High Country.
Yes,
I know
beef jerky company. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, steak sells for, I don't know, $10 or $12 a pound, right? They get $10 for 2 ounces of beef jerky.
He's confounded by
I don't know how they do it.
I tried to do the math on it, right? 2 ounces, $10. So I can do my math. That's $80 a pound for beef jerky.
I went and picked up a small bag. I was about to pick up a small bag of High Country or of another brand.
Yeah.
I found that was the only brand that they had in this grocery store. And it was teriyaki flavor. I actually had to take out a small loan.
Yeah.
So, Umberto's or something like that. But I do not know. But there's industries such as software as a service that's growing. Technology. We have companies that are interested in Montana. And one of the things they look at for their employees is the quality of life.
Well, it's unparalleled.
Unparalleled
quality of life.
Yep.
Compared to a lot of
Our
other
guest
places.
is Andy Shirtliff. We should definitely do an ID. The small business advocate in the governor's office. Okay. So Arnie,
we're talking. We're focused on, as our listeners are paying attention here. These areas in which we ought to expand. Value added ag is a good one, right? And we, play off our strengths. We also have this tourism industry,
Huge.
and there are more and more people getting involved in that. I mean, Triple Creek Ranch is the number 2 resort in the world according to Travel and Leisure magazine. And I mean that's pretty amazing.
We've had them here. We've had them. They've been guests, Sandy, of this show.
Yeah,
Unreal.
Jacob.
Yeah,
Leatherman.
Jacob Leatherman, the chef down there. We asked him, what the guests
We've got a lot
want
of
to eat.
people that work with Andy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have people that have called me up before and they say, I haven't been to Montana. I know you're there, and that's part of the reason I haven't come. But I'm thinking of coming. How close are you to Pause Up or Triple? I mean, they read
right.
they read the literature, they look at the best lists.
Oh, yeah.
And those things are important in this day and age because everybody shops online,
Yes, they
and
do.
we have a good brand. Speaking about good brand, we have a Made in Montana program.
Yes, we
Is
do.
that growing and expanding?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Actually, we met with a company today that wants to help Made in Montana companies and products reach a wider audience through their fulfillment centers, whether it's here in Montana or beyond. We've got some great companies, some great products that could use maybe a little bit of help with marketing or an open door to new markets, not just here in Montana,
Right.
beyond. Yeah, that's
we have, and I'm not exaggerating this at all. As when I travel around the world, people think products made in Montana, they're on the same par as a Swiss-made watch.
Is that right?
When you talk about this is made in Montana, they think it's craftsmen who are painstakingly taking the time to do this the right way. We're not assembly line. No. And so when you talk about hot tubs made in Montana or, beef jerky coming from Montana, shoes, whatever,
t-shirts.
The Montana Watch Company, all of these places, there's a panache to Montana, this,
absolutely
pristine place.
People back east, I told you when we moved here, they're like, can you buy a bed out there? They thought we were going onto the trail, like happy trails, like there was no paved roads.
That Jeremiah Johnson was going to meet you at the airport and take you to his.
And then you had them come here and they realized, wow, this is.
But I always thought that we really needed to build that stronger and brand everything made in the state, made in Montana. Right. Made in Big Sky country. It all around the world for export.
They've got a great staff through the Department of Commerce that helps support the Montana program. Hundreds of businesses. We've got a show that has over 600 exhibitors. They've got like 6,000 people that are locals, and then they have like another 400 buyers that just walk through the show and look at all these products.
Well, and we just started touching on it. We can do that when we come back on the export potential of Montana. Because there was a big deal announced this week that I'll share with Scott, since he probably isn't aware of it, when we come back from our break.
That sounds like a great idea. We'll be back with Andy Shirtliff right after these messages. Dawn Maddox of Engel and Volkers is a proud sponsor of What Do You Know?
People.
We're talking about eating crickets. Not crickets in the studio. No, we're back with Andy Shirtliff.
Hello.
So, Andy, I was mentioning to Scott before, we've just done a deal with China.
Yes, we did.
Why don't you tell us about that? I'm pretty excited about that.
I believe it's a $300 million beef deal with the country of China.
And we're going to invest $100 million in Montana to produce what do you call it? Growing, not a slaughterhouse type operation,
which is something that Montana, whether it's the Montana Stock Growers Association, the folks at Real Montana have been really looking forward to, is having actually a facility here to slaughter livestock. I know that this is something where
that's part of the value added,
absolutely, where we can do more, whether we can do steaks, ribeyes, or we can do beef jerky and other products that you get from the cow. Where and also too, when it comes to bioscience, which is another growing industry in Montana, there are people that look at using blood as samples where they'll test their products on in serums.
Right.
And there's a company here in just outside of Missoula, or it might even be like Rocky Mountain Biologicals. Well, they'll take serum out of blood because they need to test pharmaceuticals on it instead of the animal.
Right.
It's just absolutely fascinating.
It's the next generation, and people are much more comfortable with that kind of testing than actual
How much
animal
beef are we
testing.
going to be exporting?
Well, we're starting with $200 million worth of, but I can tell you, based on my experience with China, if they like the relationship, it's just going to grow exponentially.
Yep, and
they'll suck up every
So what
cow
is
in the state.
Tell me how that works. So then that puts
there's a
need
company
for the rail.
There's an
how does it work?
An e-company in China.
Right.
It's not Jack Ma's company. It's not Alibaba.
Right.
But there's an e-commerce company that wants to sell beef. U.S. beef and they did a deal with the stock growers, a $300 million
And our
deal.
brand, Montana, is going to be slapped on.
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sure. All
Hugely
over.
valuable.
That's right.
So how does it work from a business perspective? Does that put more pressure on the Washington company and the, what is it?
Well,
the
it's
rail?
benefit to everybody,
Right,
because
'cause
you're shipping it. You got to freeze it. I mean, there's equipment investment in it.
Does it go to the
$100
port of
million.
Seattle and then from there it's shipped over?
I assume so, but I'm guessing too, with the downturn of like oil and gas, this is actually going to keep the rail just as busy.
Got it.
Yeah. It's
So-
mostly going to be rail shipped probably to either Vancouver or Seattle and then shipped to China.
Amazing.
And
Real.
by ship or air. It could even be air freighted.
So what does that mean for us?
Cows on planes? Isn't that the
Yeah,
follow-up
yeah,
to that movie?
Yeah, snakes on planes, cows on planes, legislators on planes.
Move over.
Yeah, move.
Awful.
Yeah.
Oh, don't get me
Andy,
started on
no,
dad
we're not
jokes.
going to get started.
Tell us about
Speaking
the
about legislators on planes,
Yeah.
we have a special
Sure.
session going.
Yes,
Tell us
we
about
do.
that, Andy.
So this is the Governor Bullock yesterday just called for the first time in 10 years a special session. The last one was in September of 2007 underneath Governor Schweitzer. Our budget's in a peculiar, interesting position. You look at, we had the most expensive fire season in recorded history in Montana.
Right.
We had fires everywhere. I had the opportunity to see some of the aftermath, what happened in Lolo, some of the
Shocking.
aftermath that happened over
Shocking.
in Jordan, Montana at the Sand Springs fire.
Right.
I mean, it was, as far as the eye could see, it was black. It was
Right.
farmland just burned black, and it smelled like oil. And actually, I think there was like somewhere in the neighborhood of $16 million of fencing lost. And that's what some of the supplies that went over there, including food and water, were fencing supplies.
I see.
But we have to pay for that. We have to pay for some of the largest airplanes that have ever flown in our skies to help put out the fires. There was a company that came out of, I think, Utah or Colorado. They had 2 planes stationed in Helena that would fly over the fire that was in Seeley Lake, the fire that was in Lincoln, the fires that were up near Libby, and the fires that were down here. I mean, that costs a lot of money. And with the estimated revenue that the legislature thought that we were going to make due to tourism and the oil, and that was not everything's going to be fine. However, we didn't get that revenue. Revenue was not
there
as
was
high.
irrational exuberance about how much revenue we were going to generate.
It was inflated numbers,
Right.
And everything that we base our budget on didn't turn out to the level we thought it was.
Got
Whether
it.
it's oil, gas, coal, everything else, tourism, and the fires and the cost of the fires, we're in a bad spot when it comes. We're working through a way to
More
get
expense, less
So
revenue.
Exactly.
we have a target of what, $200 million?
roughly. Yeah. So then Governor Bullock and the staff have been working for months behind the scenes, working with legislators on both sides of the aisle, trying to come up with a solution. And I believe it's going to come down to 3 things. It's going to be one, where they're looking at revenue. How do we get more revenue? And one of the tenets that we're looking at is having the least amount of effect on Montanans that live here, the 1 million people that do. One of the areas that we're looking at is the 12 million visitors that we get.
Right.
Raising revenue based on the bed tax,
Right.
heads and beds, where it's been at 7% for years. But then the hoteliers have agreed, let's bump it up a little bit, where we want to do our part.
Sure, because
Just like
when somebody comes and visits, on
Right.
a $100 room, if the tax is $7 or $10,
Yeah.
they're not going to care.
Nobody's
Right.
going to care if they come from Calgary, if they come from San Francisco, they come from overseas. They'll look at it and say, I would have paid twice as much.
Right.
And we are, people have said this about Montana, that we're kind of a cheap date sometimes, whether it comes to salaries, whether it comes to advertising for political campaigns, where it's really inexpensive. Same thing is true with some of the travel. People are just floored that we don't have a sales tax. If we increased the bed tax, it's mostly going to hit the people that visit here, the 12 million people.
Right.
We bring in like $3 to $4 million or $3 to $4 billion due to visitors coming to our state. Where do they spend their money? Hotels, rental cars, and fuel for those rental cars. And of course, food, but those are the 3 main things. And that's kind of one of the targets, but also too, maybe raising a little bit here for revenue, but also too, there's cuts that are being proposed that will go through, some of which will go through, but also too, the transfers.
Right.
And ending tax breaks. We actually have a tax break that was under a previous governor that gives away a lot of money, gives tax breaks to people who are very extremely wealthy that pay the same tax rate as people who make minimum wage. whether it's down here across the street. I don't know if that's fair. I think it's still spending. It's still giving away money that shouldn't be given away. And that's something where there's a philosophical discussion about that.
Corporate largesse, both here in Montana and around the country, is obviously a sore point and an important point in terms of, generating more revenue without hurting the 98% of the population.
Sure. And that's
people forget under Ronald Reagan, the top corporate rate was 90%.
Yeah, they were paying a lot, but we're giving a lot of money away, which could have been helpful to pay for the fire season.
Right.
It's on our backs, or it could have been paying for our schools and our roads. And people want to talk about infrastructure. That bill struggled. We've tried this infrastructure bill throughout the.
Right, but I think the smart strategy is there are 11 or 12 million people that come and visit, that take advantage of us, and if it costs them $10 or $20 more a visit, it's not going to affect them at all.
No, they'll still come and visit.
I have a lot of people that come in, and if you go to San Diego, you go to Denver, you go to Seattle,
$30.
You pay $30 on top of the bill every single visit.
Let me ask a question because we got to wrap it up. Sure. Andy, how do people get in touch with you if they're listening to this show and they want to reach out to the office?
Oh, we'd love to have you get in touch with us if you have an idea, an invention, if you're an existing business or a business that's listening that's from outside our borders. We'd love to have you here in Montana. Go to business.mt.gov. You can reach out to me at 406-444-5472. My email is just shirtliff@mt.gov.
And how do you spell the last name?
Shirtliff. 2 F's at the end, not S's.
And that's how we got in touch with them, by the way.
That's right.
Andy, you've been a great guest.
I appreciate your time, guys.
It's always good to catch up with you.
I really
appreciate it. It's a pleasure.
All right, Arnie, I'll see you next week.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to What Do You Know?
I can't wait for the next show, Scott.
I'm excited too, Arnie. If you'd like to suggest a guest, send me an email at scottrichmond@townsquaremedia.com. We'll see you next week. And thanks for listening to Newstalk KGVO,